Hi, I'm Melissa Royster, and you are watching Mission 360. Every week we focus on mission stories and challenges all around us. The Millerites firmly believed that Jesus Christ's second coming to earth would occur on October 22nd, 1844. When his second coming did not take place, many Millerites were disillusioned and gave up belief in a literal second advent, but others went back to studying the scriptures. Over the next 15 years, former Millerites, meeting in a sequence of Bible conferences, identified a series of Bible messages forgotten since the days of the early church. These key truths were the following: an imminent and literal second coming, the seventh day, Saturday, not Sunday, no eternal torment for sinners, Christ's ministry in the heavenly sanctuary, and the remnant group of believers who call people back to divine truth. These biblical truths emerged gradually. In the 1850s, there was no Seventh-day Adventist church, only small groups scattered across the northern United States who had these beliefs in common. They did not even have a name for themselves. 13 years later, a general conference was formed to organize the Seventh-day Adventist movement. Let's travel to the place of this inspired beginning.
We're here in Battle Creek, Michigan, at the very place where God inspired His church to begin this tremendous, mighty movement and Advent message all across the world, using Revelation 14 and the three angels' messages. Right here in Battle Creek, the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists was organized in 1863. That's 150 years ago.
We're here in historic Adventist Village in Battle Creek, Michigan. This is a 3-block campus. The village is located on a 3-block campus. And what we have here are historic buildings, some original on site, some that have been moved in, and we also have some replicas, because we're trying to preserve the story of God's leading in the history of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. It is very important for us to know where we came from and why we're here and what our mission is. If we don't know our roots, then we really don't know where we're going or why we're doing anything now. So the attempt here is to retell that story of the pioneer men and women who started our church.
We've been looking back, understanding how God has led in the past, but I want to tell you the most important thing is that we don't forget how God has led us, because He's going to lead us in the future. Each one of us has been called to be tremendous, valiant workers for God. For Jesus is coming soon. Don't ever forget, you are a vital part of the great mission that God has entrusted into the hands of Seventh-day Adventists. Let this 150th anniversary of the establishment of the General Conference be a strong commitment for you and for me to look forward to Christ's soon coming and to take as many people along with us by God's grace.
As we draw to a close of this 150th year, this anniversary of church organization, we must look to the future and look to what our mission will be. How will we shape it? What will we focus on? We remember the pioneers, and we remember their commitment, their sacrifice, and the fact that they didn't see outreach as just an event or just a program. They saw it as a lifestyle. And as we move forward in mission, we must see our outreach as not just something that we do occasionally, but it's something that every church member can be involved in. Not just being involved in church activities, but being involved in connecting with the community in a holistic way, following the example of Jesus, who actually rubbed shoulders with people, connected with people, touched people, got to know people and ministered to their needs in a holistic way. We are called to do the same. And the Seventh-day Adventist Church began as a church planting movement focused on starting new groups of believers. And as Seventh-day Adventist mission progresses, it must keep its focus on starting new groups in new areas, among new people groups, in new and creative ways. This gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world, and it will be done so by men and women who keep their eyes fixed on Jesus and try to follow his example of holistic ministry.
United for Mission, a call from God, the Advent movement, this could get confusing, but no one better to explain than Dr. David Trim from the Office of Archives, Statistics and Research for the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Dr. Trim, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Gary. Always glad to be with you.
This is a significant year for the Seventh-day Adventist Church, 2013, because of a 150th year anniversary. I think the term is sesquicentennial or something like that.
Sesquicentenary, indeed.
Okay.
Indeed, or sesquicentennial would work.
Okay, so we're not celebrating this, we're commemorating it. What's the distinction?
Well, if you could have taken a time machine, if you could take a time machine and go back to May 1863, step into the meeting hall in Battle Creek, Michigan, where our founders were gathered to establish the Seventh-day Adventist Church and said, "Good job, brothers, nice call on founding a church. We'll still be here in 2013, I think they'd have been extremely upset, to say the least, because they would have believed that by this time we would have taken this message of the kingdom to all the world, and therefore Jesus would have come again. So for a church focused on the end of time and the second coming, the longer we go, it's sort of it's an ambivalent feeling. So one wouldn't want to say we're celebrating as such, but it is an important time to commemorate. And having said that, there are things within our history that we do have cause to celebrate. Looking back, we can identify things we've done wrong, as well as things we've done right. And that's, I guess, one of the reasons that we're still here. But God has blessed us in many ways. He's led us in many ways. He's helped us to achieve things despite our limitations as weak and sinful human beings. And so there are some things to celebrate, but on the whole, the general tone has been one of commemoration rather than partying in the street and sort of saying, woohoo, we're 150, it's...
Right, now the very act of organising into a church, there was kind of a little bit of ambivalence about that too, right? I mean, some of the early pioneers were very skeptical about that sort of a move.
Absolutely, Gary. In fact, our early pioneers were so wary of church organisation, they wouldn't even adopt a common name. And indeed, one of the problems for historians of the church in dealing with the 1850s is, what do you call them? Because they refuse to even adopt a common name. And in fact, in 1860, October 1st, 1860, which is the first real step towards organisation, the Seventh-day Sabbath-keeping ex-Millerites or Adventists finally adopt a common name. And the motion that was put at a conference of leaders from across the northeast of the United States and the Midwest of the US, which is where the only places there were Sabbatarian Adventists, the motion was originally put that we take the name Seventh-day Adventist. And a number of those who were there sort of said, well, I don't know about that. And then fortunately, somebody was inspired and amended the motion to say we call ourselves Seventh-day Adventists. Now, I tell that story, Gary, at various churches and places around, and people always laugh. And it's a little funny, but they could see that distinction that we take the name was too organized, we call ourselves was just informal enough that they could do it. Now, that just gives you a sense of how reluctant they were to organize. The irony is, having refused to organize, even at the local church level in many cases, for 16 years, within 2 years, suddenly, church leaders had adopted something quite close to the church structure we have today, and had organized. They had, in fact, united for mission. And that's the slogan we've been using to commemorate the 150 years. But it's true. In 1863, there were Adventists scattered around a number of American states, and they had, because this was now since October 1860, they'd formed local churches, they'd formed some associations, they'd formed conferences, but in effect there were a number of different and independent Seventh-day Adventist churches. They weren't united for mission. And that's the key, that in May 1863, Adventists united for mission.
Very interesting. Now, David, I understand that in the very early days, when Adventists looked at their mission, it's kind of extended to the Pacific Ocean on one side and the Atlantic on the other. That was about as far as it went.
Absolutely. They actually say we can honor the command to preach to all nations by preaching to immigrant communities in the United States.
Right.
And they maintain that position for 10 years. And it takes a lot of pushing by James White, by Ellen White and others, and in fact the discovery that there are Seventh-day Adventists on the continent of Europe who had been raised up by a self-supporting missionary who went on his own initiative, and people who'd been converted reading Adventist literature, that finally in 1874 the church says, yes, going into all the world means all the world.
I know that Spalding, the Adventist historian, called it a comforting rationalization.
That's a good term, and I think, to be fair, here's a church in 1863, they've only just organized.
Oh, yeah.
If you were to say, and they haven't even gone to the west coast of the United States.
Right.
If you were to say, oh yes, you've got to go and do all the world, it would be overwhelming. So first they go across America, but praise God, Gary, they do go into all the world, and the change in the space of roughly a quarter of a century from saying, we don't have to go everywhere, to saying, we do have to go everywhere, but what's more, we can and we will, is extraordinary. And what's more, then they did it. And there's this explosion out from the United States in a relatively short period, and it's a wonderful story.
And it actually became a priority.
It becomes the priority. Not perhaps in that late 19th century, but from 1901 and especially 1903 onwards, with A.G. Daniels as General Conference President, W.A. Spicer as the secretary, both of whom had been foreign missionaries in Australia and India and Britain, then it becomes the number one priority, I would say, and long may it continue to be so.
And we see through those years an increasing amount of sacrifice as people support mission, go and get involved themselves.
Absolutely. People not only go, they also give, and the combination is what makes a truly worldwide church.
Yeah. Dr. Trims, thank you so much for joining us today and explaining the importance of this 150th year commemoration.
It's a pleasure, Gary.
I think I understand now. From the beginning of the Seventh-day Adventist movement, God has appointed people to proclaim His message of hope. I mean, everyone is called to do their part. After the break, Mike Ryan, a familiar face, will join us to talk about what you can do for mission.
Treat yourself to faith tales of frontline missionaries. Every quarter, the Office of Adventist Mission releases never-heard-before stories of modern heroes. These are men and women who go beyond the call of duty to touch lives and bless people with the message of hope. This beautiful DVD is yours free if you call today. Here is the number you will need. Call today. Or visit us online.
Welcome back. If you haven't watched the first half of Mission 360 today, you must visit YouTube and search for Mission 360 TV. It should be the first playlist at the top. We're talking about unity and mission. Everyone has a part to play. I mean everyone who believes in the Bible. God has left us a special message to share with the world. Don't you want to take part? Let's hear how from our guest, Dr. Mike Ryan, Vice President of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Elder Ryan, thank you for joining us on the program again.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, when we look at the challenge of mission, we tend to talk about things like cities, 1040 window, secular and postmodern West, etc., etc. But I have heard you say that they are not the biggest mission challenge.
No.
What do you describe as the mission?
I have a lot of people ask me, well, what is it? What is it? Tell me what the biggest challenge is. And I don't know what they expect. More money, more institutions, more. There's a number of things, but that is not the challenge. We have a clear indication that in the early years of the church, when it began, every member had a job. Every member had a job working for mission. But as time has come along and we've sort of grown up and become a, church membership approaching 20 million, it's a certain percentage of the membership has sort of lost that urgency that feeling of necessity to become involved in the mission. And so we clearly know that there's a number who sort of just come and they listen, and that's about their involvement in church. And if we really want to be about our mission, and we really want to see it go forward, we need to get back to that culture where every member is using their particular gift in the mission of the church.
Now, we can talk about the influence of the apathy that comes with the culture and busy with other things, etc., etc. But the church itself, I think, has perhaps been at fault in not providing opportunities at times.
Well, I think absolutely. Sometimes we will develop methodologies that really don't require a lot of church member involvement. And you can almost run the whole thing with just preachers and teachers, and there's sort of a casual invitation, members become involved. But I don't think this is the model that is really successful and the model that we see in areas that are growing rapidly. In the areas that are growing rapidly, it is definitely a membership culture to be involved. And so I think we need to go back to the drawing boards and take a look at methodologies that begin to make them involved. You know, some of the challenge is trying to get people to agree to be involved, because very slowly we're watching the data change, and we recently had an indication that members that are younger than 25, they are taking a look at the time Jesus will come, and they are saying, well, it might be at least 20 years or more. But whereas if you had asked somebody back in the 1880s when Jesus was coming, they'd tell you, well, it can't be more than 10 years. It can't be more than 5. It can't. He may even come in the next couple of years. And I think that urgency, that somehow we need to rebuild that. And of course, the way to rebuild it is to again focus on developing methods that encourage the involvement of people's gifts.
Now, traditionally, people have thought, I need to be a pastor or a teacher or maybe a missionary nurse or doctor, but we haven't seen other things such as being a motor mechanic or a carpenter or whatnot as being a mission field as well.
Yeah, no.
And so we've basically said evangelism is something that will be done by a select group of experts.
Yeah, and that's what you get from a lot of people. That you'll say, well, how many feel you have any talents that you can give to mission? Oh, I wasn't trained as a pastor.
Right.
I can't speak. I have no idea how to do this and that. And they sort of come down with the Moses syndrome. And if you read God's call to Moses, obviously he had a long list of reasons why he couldn't become involved in the mission. And so you hear that. But I sometimes feel that the expression on the part of members is legitimate, because I think we as church leaders and pastors have sort of fallen into methodologies that we can implement. And we haven't really given a lot of thought to, well, what can the members not only implement, what can they organize? What can they create? What can they own? And this is I think, built on our theology of the priesthood of all believers. And that's a very biblical principle, that all are called. And so I think there's a little room for the church to make some improvement there.
And the other doctrine, of course, is the doctrine of spiritual gifts.
Yes.
That some are given to be pastors, some administrators, but we're not all called to be public evangelists, for example. Not everybody has that spiritual gift.
Yeah, I met a lady in northern Brazil who last year had brought 1,000 people to Jesus.
Oh,
And
what did she do in her spare time?
It was amazing to talk to her. She no theology background, et cetera, but boy, she was passionate. And she said, we're living, I think, right before Jesus comes. We need to be about our business. It's urgent. But I can tell you, when I looked at what she had, I saw two great big skills. One, she was a good listener. And number two, she really was very, very concerned about touching people's lives where they had needs. And when she would do that, they would say, well, hey, this lady really, you know, and it would be a little group that would form, a little group. And man, she, as she gave the report, she was giving Bible studies to groups of 50 and 60 and 70 at a time. And so that was amazing to meet her. But again, it was her gifts, I think, that brought that.
So somebody viewing this program who says, well, I don't have any special gifts or talents or whatever, what would you say to them in one sentence?
I would say that if you will take that to the Lord in prayer, and you just say, look, I don't know if I have any talents or not, but Lord, if I do have any, I'm going to turn them over to you. I will tell you this, if you'll make that commitment and you make it repeatedly, get ready to have your life change, and it'll be a life that's exciting beyond your imagination.
Elder Ryan, thank you again for being part of this program.
It's always a privilege. I like being here.
There is a job for every member. There is an assignment for everyone willing. Why don't we visit the Democratic Republic of Congo to see how one global mission pioneer is working above and beyond to bring people hope.
The city of Kinshasa, capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and home to more than 10 million people. Despite the size of this city, only about 8,000 Adventists live here. Reaching the people here comes with great challenges. People here don't want to stop and listen. They don't want to make time for religion. But those who do catch a glimpse of God's Word hunger to learn more. This is Serge. He is a global mission pioneer working in this challenging city to ensure that more people come to know Jesus. Serge prepares at his home to share a message of hope with a small group. He leaves his humble home to face the vast urban jungle. His motivation is reaching those who have never heard the Adventist message. He walks far to reach the makeshift church where the people are already waiting for him. This humble church sits on a local church member's land, tucked away from the busyness of the street. Its walls are made from sheets and tarps, but God welcomes all people into His house of worship. As our pioneer greets the people, he can see their hunger to learn more of the stories and lessons from the Bible. As they worship and read from the Bible, lives are transformed. The small group hears the stories of how Jesus lived on this earth to die for our sins.
Vêtu, car toutes ces choses, ce sont les païens qui les recherchent.
This is the work of a global mission pioneer, to help reach the unreached people around the world. As global mission pioneers, they work hard not only to tell of Jesus' love, but also to show it. Although this urban setting may be a challenging place to work, global mission pioneers like Serge are willing to accept the challenge so others can learn about Jesus. Please pray for our global mission pioneers here in Kinshasa, and thank you for your support of mission around the world.
I hope you're enjoying today's program as much as I am, so stay tuned. We will be right back.
Treat yourself to faith tales of frontline missionaries. Every quarter, the Office of Adventist Mission releases never-heard-before stories of modern heroes. These are men and women who go beyond the call of duty to touch lives and bless people with the message of hope. This beautiful DVD is yours free if you call today. Here is the number you will need. Call today. Or visit us online.
On today's program, we've been looking at how God leads people. And God places calls, and often we're not ready. We have every excuse. I'm inadequate. I'm too sinful. I don't have any talents. I don't have any gifts. But you know, at the stage where we feel we're not worthy, that's when God can use us. And we see through the Bible, story after story, of people who felt that they were inadequate. People who said, Lord, I'm not sufficient for this. And it's almost like this is a qualification that God is looking for. He's not looking for people who come along and say, yeah, look how wonderful I am. I'm the person exactly that you need. It's like God wants the qualification of, I'm unworthy, I need you. And so in the book of Isaiah, there's a beautiful passage that really appeals to me. It's in chapter 6, where God comes to Isaiah, and he's humble. And he cries out to God, woe is me, I am undone, in the King James Version, or I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips. But that was just where God wanted him to be. He confessed his sin, his need, and from there God was able to train and equip him for ministry. And we see this with so many different characters in the Bible. We think of Jeremiah, didn't have the right words to say. Well, that's fine. God comes to Jeremiah and puts words in his mouth. And we think of Moses, oh Lord, I'm not a good spokesperson, I don't know how to speak. Well, that's fine, God provides a spokesperson. We think of Mary, that humble woman, the mother of Jesus, so inadequate, the task was so big, what a tremendous calling. Well, God gave her his spirit and gave her power from on high. And we see this repeated over and over again. So if God's calling you and you don't feel adequate, wonderful. He can equip you, he can train you. Well, that's about it for today's program, and I'm so glad that you were able to join us. I hope that you're inspired and encouraged and challenged by what you've seen and heard. If you want to find out more about Adventist Mission, just visit our website at adventistmission.org. There you'll find lots of information about mission, how you can be involved. For Adventist Mission, I'm Gary Krause. Thanks for joining us, and I hope to see you right here on Mission 360 next time.